Welcome to the Getting Down and Wordy podcast ad.
What do we do on this podcast?
Well, it's the first Edda musical podcast.
Can you try that again in real words so that people can understand?
Fine. We talk about the intersection of popular music and language.
Oh, can we also talk about Eurovision?
Find other great
Okay.
podcasts like
Find
this
us on
one.
Apple and Spotify.
We are a Podmoth Network podcast.
The following podcast discusses adult situations and gets very sweary. Sensitive ears beware. You're listening to the Fuck My Work Life podcast, where the work stories are real, the laughs are contagious, and all of us can agree that work sucks.
Hey there, fuckers. It's Kay.
And Jay.
And this is just a quick little intro for y'all. As some of you may know, we are on a little break for the holidays.
Preach, Kay, preach.
Yeah, Jay's my hype man today.
Yeah, you tell them.
Word. So we just are giving a little intro. We are going to play a previously Patreon exclusive episode for you all. We shut down the Patreon, everybody.
Yeah.
Just for the ease of
Womp womp.
of life, trying to make this whole podcasting experience less stressful, I guess.
I mean, or just less.
Just less. Yeah, less to worry about so we can just have fun with it, you know? So anyhoozle, we are going to play the recap. We've been recapping the Apple TV Plus show Severance. Over on our Patreon. So we did release the first episode here on our regular feed months and months ago. So if you haven't listened to that, go listen to that first. And then listen to this one. This is episode 2.
Half loop.
This show is insane, you guys. So if you haven't watched it, sign up for your free Apple TV.
TV.
7-day trial and just binge this show. There's not that many episodes.
Binge.
You're such a nerd.
What?
But it's a trip. I think you'll enjoy the show and hopefully enjoy our recaps. There are spoilers, of course, because it's a TV recap.
Kay from Fuck My Work Life says it's a trip.
You're a nerd burglar. Okay, on that note, everybody, this is coming out on Thanksgiving Day. So if you are in the United States and you celebrate, have a safe and happy
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving. Anything else you want to add, Jay?
Bye, fuckers.
Yeah. We love you, fuckers. Bye.
Bye. Welcome back, fucker patrons.
Patron fuckers.
Patron fuckers.
Welcome back to episode 2
of Severance.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you haven't listened to the recap of episode 1, go listen to that first and then come back and then listen to this one. Should we just get into it?
Yeah, we don't have any housekeeping or anything. This is...
So we don't have housekeeping, but there is one thing. So I took a poll on Twitter asking people if they would get the severed procedure.
Oh.
The 3 options were abso-fucking-lutely, no way, that's crazy, and what the fuck are you on about? So 23% of people said they would do it, 46% said no way, and 31% had no idea what we were talking about.
Yeah, that's about right.
So found that interesting. No one gave reasons why they would or wouldn't. I took a screenshot of the poll on Twitter and I was just trying to scroll down like I was on Twitter on the picture. I'm like, why isn't it working? That was a fun little thing to do.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to recap the first half of this episode while Ghost goes apeshit over a little fishy. So Severance episode 2 titled Half Loop. So we open up on a black screen and we hear Helly's voice going through that same speech that was on her videotape to herself about going through the severed process and how it was by choice. And then it kind of fades into showing Mr. Middledick. I know that's not his name, but that's what I'm going to call him hereforth.
Sounds good.
Middledick recording her with a cheap-ass looking camcorder. So again,
Yeah.
like super high technology process they're doing, and they're using the like
I know.
out-of-date, cheap-ass fucking technology.
I know. Watching the first episode and then watching this episode, I'm wondering if they're doing this at Lumen for like security reasons. Like, you know, if they had like the high tech stuff, maybe it could be hacked. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. Could be hacked, or just to kind of give people no perception of what it's like on the outside too. Like what kind of technology they have on the outside, you know?
Yeah.
So next, MD Middledick and Helly are kind of walking through the Lumen building, and he's prepping her that once the procedure starts, her work personage will wake up on the severed floor in a few hours, but the next time she will be sentient is in the elevator on the way back up. And there's a handrail in case she gets dizzy. So as they're continuing to walk, and Middledick stops as the sunlight from the windows plays across the big carving on the wall of Mr. Egan. And he says, "Man, I love seeing the sunrise on his face. Did you know he used to drink three raw eggs and milk every morning? It was his favorite breakfast." So now we know where that question from the survey came from. So they're dropping things in like random conversation to see if she remembers it, kind of to test if the procedure worked. So now we're in the severed procedure room, and Helly is awake during this process, obviously numbed. We can hear a heart monitor. We see like medical kind of like x-ray monitor type things of her brain and shit. Mr. Middledick is just sitting there like staring at her creepily. And she's like,
it's so weird.
It's very weird. She's like, "They say it doesn't hurt." And he's like, "I'll be upstairs after to let you know how it went." And she says, "I'm sorry if I freak out on you a little." A little, Helly?
Yeah, no shit.
Like Helly knows herself. She must be just like a hard ass in real life.
Take no shit.
Yeah. And he says, "Don't worry. We're excited to meet you." Just weird and creepy.
Yeah.
And then he like pulls up an old school camera to his face and like just takes a picture of her.
What do they call those? Like 30 millimeter? Like,
I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just like a film camera.
Like a film camera from the 90s.
Yeah. But he's just like sitting there. She's got her, head cut open, and he just snaps a picture of her.
Yeah.
So then they drill into her skull, and they place this weird, it's not a microchip. It's like this weird little glass tube with like something on the inside of it.
Yeah.
And they put it in this needle, and they shove it all the way down into her brain. And you can see it on the monitor, kind of x-ray monitor, where it places it all the way into her brain.
Next to the medulla oblongata.
Sure. Was it?
I have no fucking idea.
No, your medulla oblongata. Wasn't that a Adam Sandler movie?
Waterboy, yeah.
Waterboy. So after they place it, the sound of the heart monitor kind of starts to slow down, and she's looking at Middledick, and her like vision starts to fade. She closes her eyes, they kind of flutter, and then when she opens again, she's walking out the white hallway door into the stairwell.
Oh, how did I know this was coming?
I was right. So basically, they must have like, even though they tell them all that the elevator is, where they'll regain their self, they obviously have this little fail-safe thing in the hallway, because I'm sure a bunch of people freak the fuck out and try to leave.
Yeah.
So every time she goes out that door, she's her
Audi.
We don't know it's called that yet. But yeah. So her outside persona, her personal persona comes to, and Middledick is waiting there, and he's like, "Oh, sometimes we have to acclimate." Wait, what does he say? I wrote it down. So he's saying her orientation has been a lot of fun, but sometimes the transition is hard. So they bring them to the stairwell to experience it viscerally. And she's kind of surprised. She's like, "Was I trying to leave?" And he's like, "No," just totally lies to her. So now we're seeing, like, again, the other half of those numerous attempts of her trying to leave. And each time he kind of turns her around and sends her back in. And then the last time she kind of burst. Oh, yeah, monkey. The last time she bursts through the door and says, wow, I really don't want to be in there. And he's like, you're learning that you do. When we heard you were coming here, it was like a miracle. It's amazing what you're doing.
Yeah.
I can't wait to find out what she was on the outside. I'm sure she's some sort of crazy scientist or something, right?
I don't know. That could just be bullshit that he's feeding her.
True.
You know, it could be the same bullshit they feed every person, because I can almost guarantee every person goes through that.
Yeah, but this is her actual self, so she would know if she was.
Yeah, I know, but every person gets severed, goes in there, and then looks at fucking numbers floating around on a computer screen and is like, fuck this.
So she walks back through the door, and we get a close-up on her eyes, and we kind of hear that, like, zoom and the ding of the elevator. Her eyes flutter again, and the doors open because she's on the elevator, and Middleditch is standing there with that bouquet we saw her with in the parking lot, and he's like, hey, old-timer, one day down.
Yeah, I know.
So she's kind of finished her first day as a Lumen Severed employee.
Yippee!
Yay! And then we get the opening credits. So that was kind of like a long open.
Yeah.
So now we're back, and we're on the Severed floor, and Mark is the first to arrive. He turns on the lights and grabs the Senior Refiner Morning Checklist. And it says, remember, you are permitted one record to listen to each morning during your morning checklist procedures. Which will you choose today? And then some of the things on the list are brew a pot of coffee, return vending machine tokens to jar, review employee lunches, check refrigerator temperature, acknowledge Keir Egan's portrait, either verbally or silently, inspect keyboards for weak keys, and self-assess. Can I lead today? Yes, I paused it so I could write that shit down. All of the like written shit that was in this episode, I paused to read just to see if there's any like weird little, what do they call them, Easter eggs or something in there. So Mark happily goes about his morning duties while some like 60s, 70s lounge music is playing. And it's all he's like very upbeat, and he's vacuuming the floor, and they all have like bagged lunches with their names on them in the fridge, and everything. Everything has the Lumen logo on it. The coffee maker, the vacuum, the coffee, the cleaning supplies, everything. There's like no brand names. Everything's just Lumen, 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 Lumen.
Well, a brand name could trigger their outside memories.
Right.
Doo-doo-doo.
And then, you know, he's doing all his things, and then it comes to cleaning his desk, and he's dusting off his little weird crystal portrait of himself and his keyboard. And then he gets to the picture of him, Irv, Dylan, and Petey, and his smile kind of fades, and he's just staring at it for a moment. And then he like picks up the picture and then takes the same picture off the other three desks and goes and he puts them in the storage closet. So it definitely evoked a feeling in him.
That's not allowed.
No feelings allowed. He's in the storage closet putting the pictures away, and Helly walks in, and she's kind of like, so is it tomorrow now? And he's like, well, it's Monday. And she's kind of shocked that a weekend just happened.
A whole weekend?
Yeah. And he's like, well, that's how nights and weekends feel. To which she replies, like nothing? Which, damn, if this isn't capturing the way work and life feels. The nights and the weekends go by so fucking fast. Like nothing. And then you're just at work again. And he tells her it helps to focus on the effects of sleep, like feeling rejuvenated or spry, since they don't actually experience it. Then they talk again about the staggered start times, and he says it's important that they don't meet on the outside. And she's like, so I guess we're not friends. And he's like, happily, I guess not. Just walks away.
No, bitch.
It's weird. So now Dylan is explaining to Helly about the tier systems for accounts that they're working on and the different incentives involved for each, like erasers and finger traps.
Yeah.
But if you finish an account, like the top tier is a caricature portrait of yourself. And he like opens up his drawer. He's like, I've got a wealth of those in here. It's so
I feel
creepy.
like the writers of the show were playing on how they were taking aspects of employers, because a lot of times some of the stuff you're given, like even us at work, we're given kindergarten shit as rewards for.
We brought you some candy.
Yeah. Here's a pizza party.
Yeah, we just had the best year on record. You get a pizza party.
Yeah, we're going to order a bunch of Costco pizza.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting because, they have no reference. So they're probably told that these things are valuable.
Oh, yeah.
And so they're clinging to that, look at, I've got all of these caricatures. I've got so much value. It's like, or these erasers, which later he says, I didn't write it down, but we rewatched this right before recording. And he says, yeah, the erasers don't really mean anything because we don't have pencils. So they're given these erasers
that you can't take out.
They literally do nothing.
Yeah.
It's so fucking weird. So meanwhile, while Dylan's kind of going through this, Helly is flipping through a training manual, and there's a little cartoon character of the glass tube that they put in her brain on the page. And he's like, hi, my name's Sevy. It's like so fucking cheesy. And we find out, because I paused to read this too, that Lumen started as a topical salve company and has grown to the world's leading pioneer in biotechnologies. They didn't say how long, but weird. It started as just like a topical thing.
They're going to turn these people into robots.
And then at the bottom of one of the pages, it says, we know you may be curious about what the numbers mean. However, knowing the true meaning behind the numbers would inhibit your natural intuition.
They're training them to be robots.
Yeah, they're just training them to just do what they're told and not question anything. Very strange. And like work. So Dylan continues on to tell her that if you complete the most accounts and become refiner of the quarter, that shit gets you a waffle party.
What? Fucking waffle party.
Her face is like, are you fucking kidding me? And then she asks about Mark's crystal head cube, and he's like, that's not a prize. That's just something they gave him. And you can tell he's got a lot of resentment towards Mark.
Oh, yeah.
So this whole time, Mark has been fiddle fucking under Helly's desk, trying to get her station set up. And once it's ready, they turn on the monitor and they sit down, and he types in a name, and this like cheesy ass 2D graphic of a Rolodex shows up on the monitor and starts flipping through the names, and an account gets pulled up. And while this is happening, our friend Irv, played by, what is his name?
John Turturro, who's
always got great characters.
Yeah.
The little dividers in between their desks can be raised and lowered, and he lowers his, and he looks at Mark, and he's like interrupting about the picture that has gone missing from his desk. And Mark says that they're taking a new one today at Helly's party. And he just stares at him and puts the divider back up. And then Mark continues on to explain to Helly how they have to sort these different lines of code equally into 5 digital buckets. Divider comes back down again. And like Irv is obviously irked. He's like, I do think the old photos are meant to stay on the desks until the new ones come in. And then they just stare at each other for a minute, and then the divider goes back up. Irv is a stickler for the rules. So Mark is continuing on to his training with Helly, and she's kind of clicking around on this like screen full of numbers. And she asks if they're supposed to mean something to her, and how is she supposed to know like how to categorize these, because it's really just a screen of numbers that you can scroll around on. So Mark says, each category of numbers presents in such an order as to elicit an emotional response in the refiner. So Cat 1 numbers, for example, feel a certain way on sight. They'll be sort of disconcerting, scary. And she looks at him. My job is to scroll through the spreadsheet and look for numbers that are scary. Yeah. And Dylan's like, it sounds dumb, and Mark said it dumb. And Mark's like, it doesn't make sense until you see it, and it takes a while to see. Irv has interrupted again, as he has printed out the portion of the handbook about the removal of old photos and hands it to Mark.
Yeah.
And then Helly looks at Mark, and she's like, am I trapped here? What if it turns out I hate this and I want to quit? Is that an option? And Mark kind of sighs and says, look, if you're really unhappy, you can submit a resignation request with your outside self for review. But how? If they can't have any communication between the outside. And Dylan's like, and good luck getting that approved. And he's like, well, they do tend to be rejected. Plus, since this perceptual version of you only exists at Lumen, I mean, quitting would effectively end your life, in so much as you've come to know it. Just like fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
So yes, Helly, you are trapped there.
Yeah, but every day you come back, you chose to come back.
You chose to come back. Then Middleditch rolls in a cart with various melons on it, and Dylan's very excited about it. Irv says hello to him, and Middleditch just completely ignores him. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
And he tells Helly, it seems like she's fitting in and the office feels whole. Then he says, let's get this party started. And Helly's face is just kind of full of disbelief that like any of this is actually happening.
Yeah.
She's just like, this fucking sucks. I want out of here.
It's weird how you would think they'd basically be babies, you know, like they get severed. So when they go there, they have no memories of anything, you know, like I'm sure they have to tell them this is your name, you know.
Well,
but
they did. Remember, they're like, you're Helly R.
Yeah. But she comes into it with so much attitude and like, what the fuck, you know, like, how would you know that like looking at these numbers on this computer is weird?
Well, I think their memories are separated, but I don't think their personality is. Yeah.
Because
I know. You can see the very distinct different personalities between the four people. Like Irv is very like, you know, wants to do everything by the book and wants to be a
pleaser,
the best employee. And Dylan just wants to like kick ass. I want to do the best. I want to be top dog. And Mark is the like yes man, kind of like you know, kind of questions things, but goes
she's
back.
The one who chucks fucking intercom speakers at people.
And she's a hellion, that Helly. I love her. So they're starting their melon party. So they're all sitting kind of in a circle in fold-up chairs, and they're passing a fucking red ball to each other. So the ball rolls to Irv, and he picks it up, and he says that his name is Irv, as they all know, and he knows all 9 core Lumen principles. And MD is like, that's great. What's your favorite? And he looks kind of like, oh shit, what's the right answer? What do I say?
Yeah.
And after he pauses, he's like,
all of them.
All 9. But today, cheer. So cheer is one of Lumen's core principles.
Yeah, he's already half a robot.
Mm-hmm. And then he just stands up and tries to do a trust fall. Mm-hmm. And Middle Dick is like, no trust falls today, remember? So he sits back down, and then he tries to roll the ball to Helly, and she's like, no. And he rolls it to her anyway. And she picks it up, and she's like, I don't know. I've worked here like 10 hours, and I don't know anything about myself.
Yeah.
And Dylan jumps in. He's like, I like to think my Audi lives on a riverboat. So this is where we first hear them called Audis.
Yeah.
And she's like, what the fuck's an Audi? And he's like, it's us on the outside. And Middleditch is like, yeah, you saw your Audi in the video yesterday. And she's like, yeah, I'd like to talk to her again. Can I give her a message? And Irv kind of like cracks up at the thought of that. And Middleditch tells her that communication between selves is curtailed. So she asks if she can write a note, and learns that the elevators have code detectors, so messages can't be passed through. And Mark is like metal detectors for written symbols, a Lumen original. And then she starts to ask kind of more questions, and Middleditch cuts her off and asks for the ball. So he, like, you can tell he's not going to take any questioning of the way things are done around there.
Yeah, he basically tells her, like, you're not getting it.
Yeah. So he grabs the ball, and he starts spewing off some facts about Helly, like, oh, you know, she's allergic to almonds and has weak enamel, and
she's 30 years old,
and she's 5'6", which makes her the 4th shortest person in the office, and Stephanie's like, and her hair is what we call shoulder length. And then Mark just finds this hilarious. He's like, why is that fucking hilarious? It's weird. Yeah. Very weird. And he's like, and just seeing the way she is here with all of them, she most definitely has a family.
Oh.
And then he rolls the ball to Mark. And this whole thing is very like childlike and bizarre.
Oh, yeah.
It's so weird. So Mark's got the ball, and he says that he's been with Lumen for 2 years, and he absolutely loves this game. And Middleditch calls him out because he used that same thing the last time they played the game. So he's like, oh, fair point. Okay, well, and he kind of like, his smile kind of fades again, and he pauses for a minute, and then he's like, well, you know, I broke protocol this morning. And you could see like the strained look on Middleditch's face, like, what the fuck did you do? And he says that when he was putting the photos away, he put the photos away too soon because seeing Petey made him feel sad. and worried that he won't be able to run the department like he did. And Dylan's like, yep, I have the same fear.
Yeah.
Dylan's a little shithead.
Yeah. And then, of course, what's his face chimes in, the fucking brown nose.
Mm-hmm.
He chimes in, oh, I objected.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I objected to this.
I pointed out that he did it. Oh, fuck off. Middleditch is like, oh, well, I think your reaction is sweet, but puzzling that you didn't have the same reaction over Carol D. And Mark was like, well, we knew Carol D was leaving her Audi film to thank you, whereas Petey was just gone. And he doesn't know if he has a new job, is drunk on a beach, or dead. And at this, Middleditch is like, he's getting visibly upset, and he's like, Mark, stop. So he kind of has to reset his face into that like cheesy fake smile. And he's like, I think this is a good time to remind ourselves that things like death happen outside of here, not here. A life at Lumen is protected from such things. And I think a great potential response to that from all of you is gratitude. Which is like, what does that fucking mean? Deaths don't happen there? What if you died on the severed floor?
Yeah, I mean, if you died on the severed floor, then yeah, they'd be fucked.
Yeah.
You know, but if one of them died outside of the severed floor, they would just lie.
They would just disappear from their life.
Yeah, they tell them they were let go, or they took a trip to Maui and won't come back.
Yeah. But then he's like, I also think that melon isn't getting any tastier. And then like the cheesy upbeat 60s music starts again. Do, 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 do. And now we see Dylan, and he's at the melon bar, and he's taking forever to pick a piece of melon, even though they all look exactly the fucking same. And we see Irv, and he's got his plate of melon, and he goes to eat a piece, but then he puts his plate down because he notices there's like either black ink or a bunch of just dirt under his fingernails that he's totally perplexed by. Wondering like how his hands got so dirty, I guess.
And Dylan picking I wondered when he was picking the melons, I wondered, are they only allowed so many pieces of melon?
Maybe.
You know?
So he's got to get the best one.
So he's got to like, oh, do I want this one or this one? Because I wouldn't be surprised if filled his plate full of melon, if they were like, hey, fatty.
Yeah.
That's just about enough.
From what we've seen so far, every single thing is regulated. So you're probably right. So, and it also looks like there was a line for the melon bar because, Helly's up next and Mark's kind of standing behind her waiting for his fucking melon. And she asks him how he's going to find out if Petey's okay. And he tells her that Middleditch was pretty clear. She's like, sarcastically, what, you're not going to ask about your friend because your babysitter told you not to? And he replies, and it's like really strange reply. He's like, Middleditch is a nice man, and it's best to listen to him because he can't always be nice like that. Like,
I don't care.
Like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, are we going to see Middledick's bad side? You know he has one because that fucking fake ass shit is not for real. So now it's time to take their new group photo, and they all four of them line up, and Helly just looks really uncomfortable, telling him to say like gratitude and this and that, and they're all smiling, and she's just like perplexed, and like you can tell she wants the fuck out of there.
Before you go on, you skipped over the best part of that melon scene.
Oh, what did I miss?
That was the best part when he was telling her like Middle Dick is such a nice guy and he doesn't always have to be this nice. She just goes, I don't care.
Oh yeah. yeah. She's like, I don't care. Yeah. All right. So they're taking their picture. Helly looks really uncomfortable, and she finally just in the middle of taking the picture, she storms to her desk, and I think she writes down I quit or something on a post-it, and then starts running towards the elevators, and Mark is chasing her, and he's like, Helly, the code detectors, and she's like, have you tested it? Because that shit sounds made up. And she's like going for it. She's going to test it. And they're going down the white hallways, and she gets to the elevator, and as soon as she enters it, the lights turn red and alarm sounds, and she's trying to like physically close the elevator door, but it won't close. And we see a man in a suit come out of another door and start walking towards the elevator. And Mark gets trapped behind some other doors that have like a little window in it. So he's like watching this whole scene, and we follow this guy in the suit, and he gets to the elevator and turns the alarm off. And once the alarm goes off, Mark is like yelling, Mr. Grainer, Mr. Grainer. So now we know
Yeah.
who Petey was talking about in the first episode. He's like, we don't like him, Mr. Grainer. And he looks very stern, this man.
He looks very stern, but he's also old. Like, you would think like he would be the one on the floor and Middle Dick would be the one going and hunting people.
Yeah. But maybe he's more of a sadistic fuck. Who knows?
Yeah.
So he opens the door and lets Mark in. And he's like, tells Helly to like step out of the elevator and come with him. But Mark jumps in and is like, I'm so sorry. This is my first time training someone. And he must have forgotten to go over the data smuggling rules with Helly. And Mr. Grainer has zero chill. And he's like staring at Mark and Helly. And he's like, well, you're big department head now. So this is on you. Come with me.
Yeah.
And so he starts to follow Mr. Grainer and he kind of turns back and he looks at Helly and just gives her a little nod and then kind of disappears around the corner. And they're kind of going through the maze of hallways and they get to a door that says break room. And Mr. Grainer opens the door.
Dun, dun.
Yeah. Mark steps in alone and Mr. Grainer closes the door behind him. And it's this like really dark, narrow hallway with a steel door at the end of it. And Mark's just kind of slowly walking towards the door. And as he gets closer, it opens and there is Mrs. Coben standing there, and she's just like, Mark. And that's it for the first half of this.
Yes.
And so it's pretty interesting. We see a little bit more of their work personas.
Yeah.
And now Jay is going to jump in with the second half.
That's right.
Welcome back to Judge Jordan. You know who it is.
Whoa, Matt. This isn't an episode. This is our promo.
Well, what's a promo?
Just to tell everybody about our podcast, Came with the Boys.
Oh, where you and I get together and talk about craft beer and combat sports and horror movies and whatever else is on our mind?
Yeah, from Buckle to Bell, we cover the best combat news in the biz.
Oh, yeah, we do that, don't we?
Yeah, every week.
Yeah, and you can catch us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, and on YouTube. We're at GainWTB on all social media, so catch us out there and have a beer with us. Cheers.
He gets to the hallway. She opens the door and says his name. And then it goes to a black screen and you hear him say, so you're a, what is it? A
Doula.
Doula.
Yeah.
I was going to say lupa.
You're a lupa?
You're a doula. And he's on a date with a girl in a restaurant. And she's like, well, a midwife. And he asks, how many births have you seen? And she's like, over 300 now. And he's like, oh, cool. Such a high amount.
Yeah.
You know, just the way he says it is weird.
You can tell he does not want to be on this date.
Yeah, I just think he wants to be in a bottle when he's not at work.
I mean, he was definitely drinking during this date too.
Yeah. They're talking about that. You know, he asks her, you know, like 5-day work weeks. So you see like 2 a day. And she's like, yeah, depending. He takes a drink and the camera is kind of like distant when he's taking a drink and you can see her watching him drink. So she notices
he's drinking a lot.
She notices his drinking. He finishes a drink and orders another one. And she says, so Lumen, half this town. And he answers and is like, and half of me. That's a joke.
Yeah. I like how there was no pause.
Yeah, there was no pause.
Half of me. That's a joke.
And she continues with questions about, you know, how could you, like, you could have a girlfriend at work. How does your work self not know that you're married or has kids? And doesn't that fuck with your head? And he's like, well, to some people, that's the point.
Yeah. He doesn't want to know that he was married on the outside.
And then they're walking down the sidewalk and she's asking, you know, if this is normal weather for, you know, the local, he's a local there. So if this is normal weather for locals here, you know, because it's cold.
And we don't know where it's supposed to be, right?
No, we don't know where it's supposed to be.
We know it's not Montana.
It's not Montana or Minnesota. So he answers, well, I'm from Gans. Originally, he's from Gans, which I looked up. The only Gans that is a city is in Austria. So I don't think they're there either because no one has an accent.
No.
And he's like, well, you're one to talk from Minnesota with all its lakes. And she's like, well, yeah, Minnesota was cold. The one time I visited from my home, Montana.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, those are different places?
Yeah. He's got a good sense of humor, even though he's just miserable.
and you can tell at this point he's pretty lit. They go on walking and she asks him about, you know, does he live in Lumen housing? And he sarcastically responds with, I I live in Baird Creek, which happens to be subsidized by my employer. So yes, he lives in Lumen housing.
So I'm guessing, his boss lives next door. So she's watching him, but that place has got to be fucking bugged too. And like hidden cameras and shit.
You would think.
I bet you that comes out. That's another prediction I have. Because there's no way, right?
Yeah.
They seem to be keeping a close eye on them. They put them up in Lumen housing, so there's got to be some sort of like
oh yeah, there's got to be surveillance.
Surveillance, that's the word I was looking for.
But you would think if they had surveillance, they wouldn't post Coben right next to him, living right next door.
She probably knows about the surveillance. There's probably
Yeah, I know.
But there's more.
Anyway.
Yeah, we'll see.
So he has the smart-ass remark about, Lumen subsidizing the housing that he lives in. And you hear in the background two people kind of like getting people's attention, and they're passing out flyers, and, they're going on about ending Lumen, ending Severance, not allowing them to do Severance because it's forced labor and all that shit. And,
they're saying they were trying to like pass a law to make it not voluntary, right? Or something like that.
Well, I think it was just so they couldn't do it at all, because right now it's voluntary.
Well, no, they were saying like Lumen was trying to pass legislation to make it so they can do it whether people are willing or not, or something like that.
Yeah, that seems a little Nazi-esque.
Yeah.
So he says, I can't remember what he says to the girl, but he's like, hold my something. He notices these kids are talking about Lumen and the Severance, and he wants to go get into it with him. So he crosses the street, and they're going back and forth with these, and it's two kids, and he's bringing up, well, what about self-mutilators? Do they have a choice? And what about you? Do you know blah, blah, blah?
Yeah.
He says all kinds of shit. And he says, do you know that you came down here to be a infantile prick?
Infantile?
No, it was I
don't remember.
Some weird name. But he basically called him a prick, and the guy was like, the guy called him an asshole, and he was like, oh, and you can tell he's like drunk.
Yeah.
He's drunk, and his date is like super fucking uncomfortable.
Yeah.
He's like looking at the kid, and he's like, are you 12? Are you even in high school yet? And then he looks at the date, and she's like, got this look on her face, and she just raises her eyebrows, and he's like, okay, come on.
Is it going to be a one and done date for this lady?
Yeah, definitely. But I think he would rather have it that way.
Yeah.
And they walk off, and it clicks to him in his fridge, cracking a beer open, and he just starts pounding the beer and sets it on the counter, and is like looking down at the counter and shaking his head. And it's obviously like he's ashamed. That's what I got.
Yeah. I mean, I think with him, it's probably a lot of things. He's embarrassed that he let himself yell at the kids. He didn't want to go on that date. He's fucking miserable. He just wants to sit at home and be alone and drink. Yeah.
And, he's looking down at the counter. He shakes his head, and he looks up, and he notices the card that Petey gave to him. And he picks it up. And as soon as he picks it up, there's a knock at the door. And he answers the door, and it's Miss Salvig, who is also Miss Coben. And she's holding a plate of cookies. And she's like, a peace offering? And he goes, are we fighting?
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, for the bins, And he's like, oh, yeah, whatever,
Yeah.
And he takes the cookies, and she stands there, and you can tell he wants to close the door, but she's just standing there, and she rubs her hands together. So he invites her in.
For milk.
And offers her milk. He takes the cookies to the kitchen, and she's walking through, and she's kind of like inspecting the hallway as she's walking through, and she notices the light out.
Mm-hmm.
And when she gets in the kitchen, she says something to him about still waiting for that third light to, repair itself.
Yeah.
So he tastes one of the cookies. I'm not even reading these notes. He tastes one of the cookies. Oh, as he's walking in the kitchen, she says like, oh, I'm experimenting with chamomile. Mm-hmm. So the cookies are fucking chamomile, which I've never heard of, but
sounds good. Tea cookies?
He's in the kitchen. She says, she wouldn't be offended if he gags, and goes in the kitchen. He pours the glasses of milk and then tests one of the cookies out, tells her they're magic, but the look on his face doesn't really say that they're magic. He didn't look like he was into them too much.
Well, they're not alcohol.
Then she just goes into the story about her husband right before he died, said he was going to build a house for them in the hereafter. He would build an apartment behind it in case she found a new man before she got there.
Yeah.
Which seemed weird. And he kind of looked at her like, what the fuck? And she was like, he even wrote blueprints. I keep them in my purse.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just clicks to her leaving.
Yeah. I'm like,
Her
what is
leaving.
the fucking symbolism behind this fucking conversation?
Yeah, it was just so weird how him eating the cookie led into that.
Yeah.
What spawned her to tell him about that? Maybe she was trying to bang him.
Could be.
So she leaves, and as she's leaving, she tells him, come by my shop. I have a bath bomb I'll give you that will make you sleep like a rag doll.
She's very concerned about his sleep. Right? In the first episode, she said something about him sleeping and the saints blessing you while you sleep or some shit.
Which, I mean, he drinks himself to sleep. He sleeps. So, yeah, she says, come by the shop. He says, I'll have to try to come by, and closes the door and walks through the hallway and looks up at the light that's out, and then goes down to the basement and is looking for a light bulb, and he comes across a bin and is looking through that bin, and the light bulb package is empty, but he grabs the bin next to it and grabs like a green and white or green and red candle out of it, just looks at the candle and puts it back in the bin, puts the top on the bin, and on the top of the bin it says Gemma's Crafts.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that was his late wife's name, Gemma.
Yeah.
And then it clicks to him passed out on the couch with the TV on in the background. Now it's the next morning and he's getting in his car. It's raining, but there's snow everywhere, which, I mean, I guess, like the snow was pretty built up, but it was raining. He sits in his car and sighs, like we all do before we go to work.
Yeah.
And pulls out the flyer from the kids the night before and looks at it. Then he goes back inside and grabs the card that Petey gave him. And as he's driving, a phone is ringing, and Mr. Milichik, or Middle Dick, answers, and he's calling into work sick. Middle Dick asks, how serious it was, and he's like, oh, it's just a minor stomach event. And he says, Milchick says, oh, sorry to hear that, and I know your innie will be sad to have missed the day.
Mm-hmm.
He continues driving to the address that is on the card. So it flashes to Dylan, and he's in not the break room, but a break room where there's like concessions, and there's a little jar on the table, and it says only 2 tokens per employee per day. So he grabs a token and he goes to the vending machine and puts it in, and he's got a few choices. He's got edamame, raisins, peanuts, and there was blueberries, but then there was one that I forget what it. I didn't write it. I didn't
look.
Write it down.
It just all looked it was all in like very plain packaging.
Very plain packaging, but there was one that the name of it was like something you would find in fucking potpourri. Like, it was weird, like elderberries or some shit like that. So he puts one in and he gets the raisins, and Irving walks in and is like, where's Mark? He's supposed to come in before us, and he's obviously flustered about it.
Something's not going the way it's supposed to.
Dylan's like, he's probably sick. I don't think they'd bounce him, the same week as Petey. And Irving goes, I hope not. I don't want to be department chief. Mm-hmm. and Dylan says, well, what makes you think, you got a lot of confidence from someone who got caught snoozing? And Dylan walks away, and Irving's like, I can't help it that I was hired older than you were. Helly walks in and is like, never ends, does it? And he's like a constant toil.
Yeah.
And walks back to his desk.
And he does the stupid, hey kids, what's for dinner? And Dylan just goes, nope.
Yeah, Helly follows Dylan to the desks, and she's like, where's Mark? And he's like, sick or fired, and she's like, oh, you don't think they'd fire him because of my note thing? And he was like, nah, they wouldn't fire him for that. Plus, he did a stint in the break room yesterday, and she just looked confused.
Yeah.
It flashes to Middle Dick and Grainer in Coben's office discussing Mark calling in ill with with something being abdominal. And Grainer says, funny timing.
Why?
Because he went to the break room the day before.
Oh, yeah.
And then the scene opens with Mark pulling up to the address 499 Half Loop Road, which I looked up and there's no such thing. Because after watching this one, I've been wanting to know, like, where does this take place? You know, without like looking up on a website and getting like spoilers.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of wanted to figure it out, but Half Loop Road doesn't exist.
I
But
guess we're not meant to know. Keeps it.
Yeah, I don't think
creepier.
so. But 499 Loop Road, it's in like 20 different states.
Yeah.
So he pulls up to the address and it looks like a bunch of old abandoned greenhouses. Then it shifts back to the office and Dylan is going over the many different prizes they win at work again. Erasers, finger traps, but then their voices fade out and it focuses in on Irv starting to doze off at his computer. He drifts off, but in his dream he is awake and black ooze starts appearing from everywhere. It's coming down like the partitions in the middle and
down his keyboard and stuff.
Yeah, and it gets down to his keyboard and almost touches his finger and he jerks back and screams as he wakes up. He apologizes and then standing to the side is Middle Dick.
Yeah, like he was already there. Which is weird. Unless he was sleeping for a long time, you know?
Yeah, who knows how long he was sleeping. But you see like the back of Middle Dick, kind of the side of him.
Yeah.
And he just goes, Irving, you know, like, you've been a bad boy.
Yeah.
And it shifts back to Mark walking around the greenhouses. And he's obviously like he's searching around.
Mm-hmm.
And he makes his way through one and finds a pot heating over a fire. He looks over his shoulder and Petey is standing there, pretty disheveled.
Yeah.
You know,
he looks way more I wonder, well, that much time hasn't passed, right? It's only been a couple days, but he looks way worse than he did at the diner.
Yeah, he looks way worse. But he also sleeps in a greenhouse.
That's true.
And then it shifts back to Middle Dick and Irv walking through the hallways. And Middle Dick explains that they're going to be deducting his pay for the time he was dozing. And that's easy to fix, but what's harder to fix is their trust in him. And Irv apologizes, of course, and Middle Dick says he won't, you know, no one's hankering to send him to the break room.
I'm not mad.
And
I'm just disappointed.
Yeah, they'll do a wellness check and go from there. And he opens the wellness room door for Irv and he steps into the waiting room. And then it clicks to Helly looking at numbers, jokes about, oh, a 4.
Yeah.
Like she's scared. And Dylan is like, don't fuck around. You'll get it when you get it. I told you it takes time. And then she asks, like, you know, what the numbers mean. And they basically just have theories.
Yeah.
And he goes over his theory of like, oh, they're cleaning the sea.
Yeah.
If people are voluntarily getting severed for this job, then the outside world must be fucked.
Yeah.
So they're cleaning the sea and, you know, they have to send like drones, I think he says, down in the sea to kill off all the dangerous eels before people can actually go in the sea and clean it up. And, you know.
Yeah. I feel like Dylan's Audi is a big fucking comic book nerd.
Oh, probably. And then he goes, Irv thinks they're removing swear words from movies.
Yeah. I wonder if we'll ever know Mark's theory.
And then it shifts back to Mark and Petey. Mark asks what they do down there. Petey doesn't know. He thought he would know after the being severed was reverse. What did he call it? Oh, reintegration.
Yeah.
He thought he'd know after reintegration, but he doesn't. But he tells him he's been mapping out the floor of the basement. And he like points him to this map, I say in quotations, and it looked like a 10-year-old drew it.
Yeah.
And then Petey gets a headache and cries that it's so bad. Petey tells Mark about the break room, and then he plays him a tape.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know this when we watched it the first time, but that tape is Mark's voice. Yeah. I didn't realize it.
It's Mark and Petey. So Petey, I think, was
giving Mark
the whatever kind of whatever they get in the break room.
Yeah.
But how did he record it? Did he do the He must
know that yet. He must have gotten severed
unsevered
or reintegrated
and still continue to go to try to get information.
And then that's why he was let go. But I thought about that, but I was like, I would think that if they found out that he reintegrated, they would just kill him.
Yeah.
Because he's afraid to go home. He can't even go home because he's afraid that Grainer guy is going to come after him.
Well, it could be that he left before they knew, or who knows? Who fucking knows?
Yeah,
I'm sure we'll find out.
I'm sure we will. So he holds up a tape recorder and Mark's like, what's that? And he is like, the break room. He pushes play and it's Mark, forgive me for the harm I've caused this world. None may atone for my actions but me, and only in me shall their stain live on. I am thankful to have been caught, my fall cut short by those with wizened hands. All I can be is sorry, and that is all that I am. And then a voice comes in is like, I didn't believe you, again. So
this is like very religious.
Yeah. It's very culty.
Uh-huh.
Like he continues on and starts saying it again, and then Petey pushes stop, and it clicks to.
Wasn't Mark like, what the fuck is that?
Oh yeah. What the fuck is that?
Yeah.
And that's when he told him it's the break room. Then it clicks to Irv in the waiting room of the wellness center, looking at a picture, and this picture is weird. I'm guessing it's Mr. Egan.
Yeah, I think it's based on like an actual historic painting. I meant to look it up. But again, I didn't want to get spoilers.
Yeah.
But
it looks like Mr. Egan with like a whip, and there's a woman, a child, and a fucking goat.
Like a goat or a lamb or something.
Yeah, like a goat.
It's very
and they're like begging.
Yeah,
they're like begging for forgiveness or
something,
mercy. And then there's 2 doors in this room. Well, 3. The entrance that he came in, and then 2 other doors. Out of one door walks Christopher Walken.
Fucking Walken.
And
more cowbell.
They go on about the painting, telling him that, he's in the O&D, which is what, optics and design department.
Didn't they say the painting used to hang in the perpetuity wing?
Yeah, it used to hang in the perpetuity wing, and Irv was sad when they moved it, and Christopher Walken was like, it's better in here. It's calming.
Soothing.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's calming, and it's like some dude about to beat the shit out of
women and children.
and a goat or lamb. And then they've got some back and forth about what, like, I really love the painting. I can't remember which one.
Well, yeah. And then they were talking about, the color scheme for some training manual. And the new tote bag.
Yeah, the new tote bag. Really I didn't write all this stuff down because I was, I didn't think it was very important. They just go on about a bunch of shit. And then Miss Casey, who is the wellness person, opens her door and calls Irv in. And
she's got no emotions on her face at all.
I think she's already a robot. She's got this small little office that almost looks like an atrium, sort of. There's like a window at the top.
Yeah.
But it's very small and it's like cone shaped, kind of.
Yeah, but there's like a tree, like almost like a giant bonsai tree in it, and there's music. Like it looks like a very relaxing space to go do yoga or meditate or something.
Yeah, and so he walks in and sits down, and she turns the birds chirping down and the music up.
Put some sort of, I don't know if it was a scent thing, but she turned something on that like almost like a humidifier maybe.
Yeah.
That says Lumen on it, of course.
Yeah, and she tells him, I'm here to share some facts about your Audi. And she goes into like, enjoy these facts equally.
Yeah.
Enjoy all of them equally. And she goes on, and it's all like just fucking ridiculous shit.
Yeah.
Your Audi is strong and helped someone move something. Yeah. Your Audi cares for the elderly and the insane.
Yeah. Your elderly, your Audi loves children, the elderly, and the insane. Like, okay.
And then she says, like, your Audi is a great swimmer. And he like laughs a little bit. And she's like, please don't react to one more than the other. I'll deduct 10 points. You now have 90 points.
Yeah.
And he's like, points. Please don't speak.
Yeah, fucking weird.
It's so weird. And then she goes on and she's just reading all these fucking bullshit. He loves to dance. And she gets to, your Audi is skilled at kissing and love making. And he goes, oh. And she's like, please don't react to one more than the other. That's 10 more points. But I was just, please don't speak. If you speak again, all points will be deducted and your wellness session will end.
Yeah.
And you could see his face just like sink,
Like they're conditioning them to have no emotions.
Yeah. So then it clicks to Dylan. Oh, wait, I fucked it up earlier because I wasn't reading.
Oh.
So now Dylan is at the snack machine. Whatever. He gets the raisins and Helly's asking about how they could get information out. And maybe if you wrote it differently, like those robots, would the code reader be able to pick it up, or is it in the stairwell? And he's like, you gotta get over this info smuggling shit. Like it's not going to work. Then Irv walks in and that's when he says, hi kids, what's for dinner? And Helly asks how wellness was. And he was like, great, very restorative. And that he met the O&D department head. And Dylan chimes in, oh, Bert, I met that guy. He's a fuck.
Yeah, Dylan
You didn't tell him we were down here, did you? He was like, he is not a fuck. And no, I didn't. Dylan is very cynical.
Yeah.
They keep going back and forth kind of in the background, and it shows Helly looking at her computer, and you can tell she's having like an emotional response.
Yeah.
And they're going back and forth about this Bert guy. She's like, guys, and they both go over there, and she's scared of these numbers.
Yeah.
And so they walk her through. Can you see the perimeter? Okay, now pin it and drop it in the box.
Yeah.
And she refines her first file.
Yeah.
Her first numbers. She refines them, it drops it in the box, and she's like, those were scary.
Yeah.
It's so weird. And then it clicks to Mark's house. His lights are on, and Solvig is watching through her window, but sees no one in the house. The scene goes to Mark uncovering a couch in the basement, setting up Petey with a place to sleep. Tells him he can use the shower if he wants. And Petey's like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah. You trying to tell me something?
Petey goes to the bathroom. He walks up to the sink, and he looks like he's starting to feel faint, or like the headaches are coming back on. He's kind of like stumbling around, and you can tell his head is hurting, but blood is dripping into the sink, and he's got a nosebleed. And he cleans up and looks in the mirror, and then it clicks to like him turning the shower on, and he's running the water through his hair. He gets a headache and looks back over, and it's his work self. Like he's in a suit and his hair is done, and he's standing in front of the
Lumen bathroom.
Yeah. He's standing in front of the mirror, and you can tell like it's almost like his mind is kind of, I guess, reintegrating.
His two memories are seeing each other.
Are seeing each other, and he just kind of slumps down into the shower and is staring up at the ceiling, and that's the end of the episode.
That's the end of the episode. Pretty creepy. A lot more stuff is coming out. We're seeing the personalities of the severed data refinement workers coming in a little bit more. We're getting a little bit more information about, there's obviously some more surveillance or something happening because these people live in Lumen housing, and Lumen's trying to do nefarious things in politics or whatever. So there's a lot going on. I can't wait to see what else happens.
I know. I'm so curious as to where this goes.
So if you have any theories, let us know. You can hit us up. And that's it. This has gone over an hour, so we should shut this shit down.
Shut it down. It's 5:00. Willow has lamented that dinner's going to be late.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Tell your friends. Send in work stories.
That's right.
We love you.
Bye, patron fuckers.
Bye, patron fuckers.
Thanks for listening to the Fuck My Work Life podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please consider rating us on your favorite podcast platform. We love to hear your workplace stories, so send them our way to fmwlpod@gmail.com or leave us a message at 310-818-3273. For more fun content, follow us on TikTok, Threads, and Instagram at fmwlpod. You can also chat with us and your fellow fuckers on our Discord channel. You can find all our links in the show notes. Until next time, bye, fuckers.
I fucked it up.